Something unusual is happening in South African media and many people are starting to notice it. A journalist known for asking some of the toughest political questions in the country has suddenly found himself pushed out of one of the biggest platforms in public broadcasting. First, he was reportedly blocked from investigating the president directly. Then, not long after that, his show at the national broadcaster was cancelled. The question many South Africans are now asking is simple. Is this just a programming decision or is something deeper going on? Because if you have followed Clement Manyathela's work over the years, you will know one thing about him. He does not shy away from uncomfortable questions. In a democratic country, those uncomfortable questions matter. Today, we are unpacking what led to this moment, the controversy surrounding his interviews, and why people believe the situation raises serious concern about media independence in South Africa. Before we begin, it is important to say this. The issues discussed in this video are based on public commentary, interviews, and public debates. Allegations mentioned in political discourses are not findings of a court of law, and everyone involved has a right of response.
Are brave enough to ask these uncomfortable, difficult questions, there are consequences that are going to come with that. So I don't ever, as a journalist, want to get to a point where I'm scared to ask this question because I'm worried about, oh, what if they don't come back? Or what if they think I hate them? Like, or what if they decide that, oh, this show, no longer. I don't want that because then I'm compromising myself and I'm doing a disservice to the listener. I would rather take the brunt, but the listener comes first. And if I think this is a question a listener needs clarity to, I will ask it no matter how uncomfortable it can be.
Clement Manyathela is not just another radio host. He has built his reputation as a journalist who pressed leaders for clear answers, not political slogans. Listeners know his style as direct questions, persistent and refusing to move on when answers don't make sense. And one example is that one of the spokesperson for presidency who came and was asked about the establishment of the task team and why Senzo Mchunu's name does not appear in that task team.
The urgency of action and the president being seen to be acting. He is acting now, as we've published all those names. He's acting against
other people, just not his political comrades.
Well, it's not a case of Minister Mchunu is being defended or protected.
Well, the president has a tendency to protect his comrades.
There's no protection.
Can I give you examples?
There's no protection.
Can I give you examples?
No, don't worry about examples. In this particular case, there's no evidence of the president protecting Minister Mchunu in any way whatsoever.
Zweli Mkhize was accused. There was overwhelming evidence against him with digital vibes. The president didn't act against him.
He's still a minister.
He resigned. And that's the point I'm making. The frustration South Africans had is the president said, with overwhelming evidence against Zweli Mkhize, he didn't act. In fact, he waits for Zweli Mkhize to resign. That is not decisive action. Decisive action is, I'm revolted with your behavior and I see what the evidence is and I can't have you in my cabinet. So is that going to be the case also with Senzo Mchunu, where the president then says, let me wait for him to resign? That is not decisive action. David Mahlobo, I've used this example to you before. David Mahlobo was found wanting by the task team the president appointed at State Security Agency. What did the president do? He gives him a job in his cabinet. Arthur Fraser is another one. I can go on and on. Arthur Fraser was found wanting. He did wrong things at the State Security Agency. Did the president take action against him? No, he didn't. He gives him a job as Correctional Services Commissioner. The point I'm making is we've seen this tendency before where politicians and the president in particular protects his comrades. He is not decisive. And hence now the frustration is, if really the president is concerned about what has been revealed in as far as the behavior of Senzo Mchunu, why would he want to wait for the commission to finish its work?
Yeah, no, I think, Clement, your definition of protecting will be different from mine.
And that approach has often put him in direct confrontation with powerful political figures. In a country where accountability is constantly debated, journalists like Clement play a critical role. They become the bridge between the public and those in power. But that role can also make them uncomfortable to deal with.
SAPS members, which would include, I would imagine, Wally Ruode, who was the head of security for President Cyril Ramaphosa. The challenge I have is IPID says, no, we don't classify every single report that we work on. And yet, there are no special circumstances in this case that are widely different to what IPID normally deals with. As I say, there are normally cases that the Hawks will investigate, or normal divisions within the other divisions within the SAPS. They will investigate cases, but those cases may involve police officers. That aspect can also be sent to IPID as an independent institution to continue with that investigation. So why is it that in this case, then the report gets classified? Because if IPID has classified other reports before, because they're investigating police officers, and the Hawks was also investigating, or, other divisions in the SAPS, they were both investigating sort of the same case, so they didn't want to prejudice on each other's investigation, then IPID would have mentioned to us that we've classified the report before because we were faced with similar circumstances. And I'm just finding it difficult to figure out why there were extraordinary special circumstances here. And then I interviewed the acting police minister, and I'm asking him, were you satisfied with the reason IPID gave you? And he can't really say yes or no. In fact, he says, you get IPID, they must be held accountable, they must be asked the questions. Why would the police minister not tell you whether or not they support an organization that reports to him? Because if he was convinced, the same way that Senzo Mkhunu was convinced of the reason for the classification, which is why he was able to explain it, the acting minister now is unable to, and that tells you that something is fishy here. He probably was not happy with that explanation.
Let's walk the...
According to discussions circulating in political and media circles, the tension appeared to have escalated after several moments on his platform. One of those moments involved criticisms around the issue of accountability at the highest level of government. Clement raised concerns that many citizens themselves have raised. Why does it appear that certain individuals close to political powers are protected while investigations take time to move forward? Those were not casual remarks. They were part of a broader national debate around corruption, commissions of inquiry, and responsibility of leadership. But the situation intensified even more during a particular interview.
Enter President Cyril Ramaphosa. What did he tell us about Morgan, HANGWANI, MAUMELA?
I go on my walks. Now in 2024, so it should be known, because Mr. Magwenya only focused on this photograph. In 2024, I am walking on that same street, and a person comes out of this house and he greets me. And as I often meet people, I ask them, who are you? He says, I am HANGWANI MAUMELA. And that's how he introduces himself to me. And I say, so you are the MAUMELA who is putting my name into disrepute. And he smiles away. And now I've encountered this person, and I walk away, and I walk to my home. And then in 2024, on the 26th of December, I am walking with my daughter, who loves walking too, on the same street. And there this young man comes out and he says, hello, Ramaphosa, my mother is here. Can you say hello to her? And I say, who is she? He says, it's Mboneni Maumela. Now, when I was at school in Papuli High School with my then wife, Hope Mudau, her brother was also there. And later I got to know that this Mboneni and this, my wife's brother, my former wife's brother, they hooked up, and as they hooked up, they had a child. And this is now HANGWANI MAUMELA, whom I did not know. But I know his mother because we were at school together. So he says, my mother is here. Can you say hello to her? And she's coming out of the yard towards the main gate. And she's wearing a gown, a morning gown. And I immediately say, I can't allow her to come into the street with a morning gown, and I go towards the gate and I greet her and I say, how are you? How have you been? That's the sum total of it all.
Okay, that's the sum total of it all. So if you have seen Morgan's house, did you see how high those walls are? Like, it's really high walls. You can't see what's happening inside and you can't see what's happening outside. In fact, people who live in neighborhoods like that don't usually just open the gate to get what? Trying to get fresh air into the yard? People who live in areas like that don't just open the gate to see, oh, who's passing there? I wonder.
In an interview with the president's spokesperson, Clement questioned why certain names that the public expected to see included in investigations were not mentioned. The response reportedly suggests that decisions around investigations can involve political considerations and timing. But Clement did what journalists are supposed to do. He pushed back. He asked if the public is demanding accountability, why delay clarity, why not provide transparent explanation? And this is where many listeners felt he was reflecting exactly what citizens themselves are thinking. Because when leaders do not provide clear answers, the questions only grow louder. Around the same period, the country was already paying attention to testimonies emerging from a major corruption inquiry, the MADLANGA Commission. Names connected to political networks, business interest, and alleged influence inside state institutions were being discussed publicly. When connections between certain individuals and political leaders were raised in public debates, Clement again asked questions about many people wanting answers. If these are claims that individuals linked to controversial networks have proximity to power, what does leadership say about it? And more importantly, what is accountability? For some viewers and listeners, this is exactly what journalism should look like. For others, especially those close to political powers, these questions can be uncomfortable. What follows next will definitely surprise many. Reports began circulating that Clement has been prevented from interviewing the president directly. And soon after that, his show at the public broadcaster was cancelled. Now, officially, decisions like this are often explained as programming changes or internal decisions, just like what we've seen even from the presidential spokesperson, of which Clement clapped back very quickly. So yeah, it says this is complete lie. There is no political pressure on SABC to cancel the show. Must come out and communicate the real reason for the cancellation of the show. You are saying I must communicate the real reason as if I'm the one that took the decision. The reasons we were given by management is that despite the show being one of their prominent shows in their flagship show, they can't afford it anymore. They're saying that they can't afford it. And I don't think that is actually the real truth and the reason. And if you guys can think about Samkelo is one of the journalists that are always talking about the ANC politics. And if you guys know Samkelo, he's always talking positive about the ANC. Hence, he always gets invited. He even gets certain information about the president saying that he's going to leave the party. There's factions and all of those things. You get to realize that this person clearly is doing what the ANC wants, is in their side. Whereas Clement is brutal with them and wants the truth and is actually hitting the very thing that we are asking for. Whereas Samkelo, they are romanticizing this entire situation. So now we are in this particular dilemma of Mr. Clement being kicked out when it comes to that particular response from the presidential spokesperson. But in politics, timing matter. And when a journalist who constantly challenges power suddenly loses a major platform, people naturally begin to question whether there is more behind the story. This situation has revived an old debate in South Africa, the independence of public broadcasting. The national broadcaster has historically been accused by critics of political influence. Some commentators argue that when journalists begin to ask difficult questions about leadership, pressure often follows. Others believe that these claims are exaggerated and that editorial decisions are normal in media organizations.
What was it like interviewing our president, Cyril Ramaphosa? You did the interview with CD, but I'm curious as to what was the most surprising thing about the experience. Not necessarily the things he had to say, but the experience.
Surprising?
Yes.
Was when there was a fallout after the interview because I had asked about Phala Phala.
Was that a condition for the interview to happen?
So, I mean, they did call us and say, hey guys, what are you looking at discussing?
Yes.
And we were like, yeah, everything.
Which is normal.
It's normal.
Yes.
Because everybody needs to prepare.
Yes.
They're not asking us for questions. But I remember we did the interview and I asked about Phala Phala, because how do you not ask the president about one issue that nearly had him resign?
Also,
the biggest scandal. Para, yeah. I asked about para. And yeah, afterwards, you would swear I had just killed someone.
Live on air?
No.
After?
On air, they were okay. And even after the interview, I was like, the people who work with the press, like, Leshapo, is everything fine? They're like, yeah, we're good. And then I started getting messages. You'll never interview him again. You nearly cost us our job. And I was like, guys, I literally just asked any basic question my listeners. That was on my show. What am I communicating to my listeners by speaking to a president and yet I don't ask about one big scandal of his presidency? So that was a surprise to me. And it's not his fault. I don't think that's his fault. Because I've been around the president many times where when you want to ask him certain questions, they try to protect him and he tells them, no, leave them. Go ahead, ask me. I've seen that many times. So it wasn't necessarily him who's unhappy about that.
It's the people.
Even if he was unhappy about it, I mean, he still answered the question. I got the response, and for me, I was sufficient and I moved on. It's the people around him who think they need to protect him from that. And I just felt, that's a bit weird. Yeah. I mean, to this day, there's a certain minister who doesn't talk to me, will never come on my show. When he sees me, he tells the producers, that guy better not come close to me.
How?
Because I asked about that.
So is it not because, I mean, I've been around that level. Is it not because at the end of the day, when you are a president, it's almost like, and I'm just using rough figures, you bring 40% of yourself into the job, maybe even 25%. The rest is everybody around you that's like, we put you here, and this is the directive we're giving you. And because we still need you here, then there's a reason we don't want you doing X, Y, and Z. Even if you are fine doing X, Y, and Z, it's not going to help the bigger picture, which you don't see.
Yeah. But then also the problem with that is this is a president who positions himself as someone who takes accountability and wants to be held accountable.
Yeah.
So it's contradictory if you position yourself like this, but the people around you don't want you to be taking certain questions. It's just weird. It's like what I see sometimes with politicians. It happens a lot where you pitch interviews with them. They don't want to come on your show because they know you're going to ask them the tough questions. So what they do is they go pick a journalist that they know is going to be so soft on them. That's what happens. And then they take one who they know is going to be soft, ask the questions, and then they're done. They're no longer taking interviews. I mean, which is fine because it's their prerogative. You can't force them to come on your platform. But if really you're serious about being held accountable and you believe in that, you're not going to be threatened by a journalist just because they're going to be asking you tough questions.
And it's not even like, I mean, honestly, that should have been the first question would be on the agenda.
I mean, really.
Of everything to be asked. Of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still like...
Yeah.
But what cannot be ignored is this. Public trust in media depends on the perception that journalists are free to question anyone, including the president. If citizens begin to believe that certain questions are off limit, that trust begins to weaken. Ironically, removing a journalist from a major platform does not silence them in today's world. If anything, it can amplify their voices. Social media, independent media platforms, and digital audience are now powerful spaces where conversations continue. And many supporters of Clement believe that this may actually expand his reach rather than reduce it, because the issue is no longer just about journalism. It's becoming a bigger question. A journalist being pushed for asking tough questions. And do not forget as well, viewers, that we are also dealing with SABC, which has constantly been receiving a lot of criticisms for being captured and being owned by the Stellenbosch mafias, such as the Rupert and the Oppenheimers, the very people that there is allegations out there that they've been funding the presidency or the presidential campaign of President Cyril Ramaphosa to a point that even allegations that President Ramaphosa was paid for by these very elites, these very people that are part of the Stellenbosch mafia. So obviously his faith, his loyalty lies with those people. There's no other evidence that we should look for to say that President Ramaphosa has been captured. Because even when he went to the United States of America, he could have left with anybody. But instead we saw Johan Rupert there speaking and talking about why we need Starlink and everything. So definitely SABC itself is very captured, and it's easy for them to make such drastic decisions without even challenging them, because it is not as independent as we think it is, and that is just a critic. Whether you agree with Clement Manyathela or not, one thing is clear: a democracy needs journalists who are willing to challenge power, not attack power, but question it. Because accountability does not come from silence, it comes from scrutiny. I don't know what you guys think about all of this thing that is happening to Clement Manyathela. You might think he deserves it because he speaks a lot, he questions a lot. Or you might just think that if we allow such things to happen, we are leading ourselves in a country where even us as podcasters are going to be limited as time goes by. Our channels are going to be compromised. A lot of things are going to be happening so that we can be silenced, because we are seeing a very dangerous trend being set by the president. We don't know what else could have motivated this reason. I think over time we'll wait for the SABC to clarify their stance and why the show has been cancelled. But thus far, it doesn't look like we have clear answers. I don't know what you guys think. Please comment your thoughts. But before I can close off this video, I wanted us to look at this quickly look at this articles by News 24. So News 24 is alleging that PKTT is overspending with over 30 million rands, and the budget that they've been allocated, they're still spending more, and that is exclusive of the salaries that they have to pay the people that are part of the PKTT. And they said that in terms of the PAIA Act, the PAIA Act allows for you to have access to information if there's a need for that to be, especially classified information or personal information. So when you use this particular act, you get to invoke that ability for you to get so-called classified information. They've requested that the government gives them information with regards to the expenditure of the PKTT, because they feel like, to a certain degree, probably Senzo Mchunu is justified by saying that PKTT is overspending and that the police is spending a lot of money on the PKTT. So I don't know, I feel like this stance by Media 24 is very much shady. They've always wanted to find something wrong with Khumalo and Mkhwanazi. And I wanted us to read quickly the tweet that was written by Dr. Ndlozi.
Budgeting of financial costs of the PKTT were becoming too much. So has the minister or the national commissioner solicited any cost analysis of the PKTT from you?
No, Chair.
Have you ever been made to account on the cost effectiveness of the PKTT in the SAPS top management meeting?
No, Chair.
Thank you very much, John.
From all directions, the establishment is mobilizing us against the PKTT and General Mkhwanazi. All this is an attempt to neutralize the momentum against the top subs general and politicians who work with organized crime. These people have turned subs into their own private security, and News 24 has been at the forefront of this demobilization and neutralization. It doesn't matter to News 24 that the organized crime cartel and that PKTT is fighting have advanced training in specialized forces and armed to the teeth with advanced weapons and technology. It's the same script. We are being neutralized. We must refuse. Those people are fighting the good fight. A good cause, if they lose, ours will become a mafia state. So I definitely agree with him. I think News 24, they're very good investigators. They are amazing investigators. But that's the thing. It's like they are also sabotaging their own investigations. Because if we have the cartel, they've been exposing a lot of tender irregularities, deaths, and all of those things. But they themselves, they're also sabotaging the very police that are fighting the very cause that they are fighting. I end up asking myself, so you guys, you want to research, then what happens? You want to expose that, oh, you want to show the world that I can expose you. And then now when the police officers, such as Abom Khonas, when they have to take action, You guys, you are just sabotaging the very work. But at the same time, someone can say that we want accountability. We want to know the transparency from the PKTT that actually they're not overspending. Because there's been allegations that they've been overspending. They need to now come with evidence to prove that they've not been overspending and that they've been spending properly and there's no unlawful or irregular expenditures from the PKTT. It just depends on what lens you are looking at this whole thing. But I don't know what you guys think about this article and the Clement Manyathela story. I will see you guys on my next upload and from the comment section when I see your views. Bye.